And welcome again to another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you, as always, Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB as we break down the Kansas City Chiefs like no one else. Breaking down today Patrick Mahomes' contract. Listen, no longer in the top 10. Is this a sweet spot for the Kansas City Chiefs? And why? We'll discuss it. When will he be looking for a contract renegotiation? How it does help the Chiefs overall. Patrick Mahomes talking up Hollywood Browns all-around play. How excited should Chiefs fans be? Rashee Rice growing on the field. Mahomes thinks so. We'll talk about the fact that the Chiefs really have kind of struggled to develop their own wideouts. Where Xavier Worthy changed that stat. What are the Chiefs doing wrong? What is the issue there at wide receiver? How has Kingsley Suamataia looked so far at the left tackle spot? Do the Raiders and their little Kermit the puppet, what would you call it? I don't know, it's a video, but a stunt. Will that carry weight throughout the season? Will that be a motivator for the Kansas City Chiefs? Steve Spagnuolo looking for a corner to step up. When will Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, are they going to be getting contract extensions? We talk about it all right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we are available for you to chat it up. Be a part of the broadcast. You can fire out some comments, some questions there in the chat room, as we've already got a number of people lining up here. Usually we go at about 8:30 Central or 9:30 Central, depending upon which time is more convenient. You can catch us there talking Kansas City Chiefs football. So be a part of the conversation by joining us on the stream. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, just about everything we can think of to be productive at streaming out. We do it. So we look forward to you joining us on that sometime soon. Jeff, Sam, welcome. As always, let's start with Patrick Mahomes. Jeff, no longer in the top 10 of the biggest quarterback contracts. If we are to grade it by APY, average per year, this should mean what to the rest of the NFL, to the Kansas City Chiefs, to Patrick Mahomes himself?
It should mean that the Chiefs are still getting the biggest bargain in sports. This is always going to be an annual story about who's getting paid more than Patrick Mahomes. And we knew that this current group who's, pushing into that upper echelon of the salary scale was going to be a little more controversial. Guys like Trevor Lawrence and Tua and, it's Jordan Love now. And so I don't put too much stock in it because he signed the deal. He knew what he was getting. He understands how it benefits the Chiefs long-term and how he wins by being able to have a little more roster flexibility. But he's also human. And I'm pretty sure probably in a couple more years, we're going to hear a story about how the Chiefs took a little more money and gave him a little more money to make him feel better about it. But look, CJ Stroud is coming up next. There will be other guys who will be – Dak Prescott obviously is in that category right now. So there are going to be more guys. He's going to probably end up being 15th by the time we get to next season.
Yeah. Sam, what about you? What's it say, big picture?
Well, I don't think he can be the biggest bargain in sports because I think Simone Biles is making like $37,000 for winning a gold medal. So I'm going to put her number one on the list. But look, I mean, his contract is a bit misleading. I mean, the back end of it is what weighs down the APY, and that just offers him some more security for the long term. We saw last time, just a year ago, that he will renegotiate this thing when it's time. When you look at his contract, it's pretty evident that time is going to be in 2027 again. We're going to be talking about a new contract, even though he's currently under contract for longer than that. So no matter what you pay this guy, he's going to be underpaid. Even if he's the highest paid quarterback in the league, he's going to be underpaid. But the question is, how much comfort does he have in falling down how far down the list does he have to fall before he's uncomfortable? And he does feel a responsibility to the rest of the league to bring up player salaries. That's why he renegotiated last year. I will say it's always been a little bit easy to say that, right? I mean, hey, I'm taking 10 more million per year to help you guys out. But there's like truth to the fact that he is significantly underpaid no matter what he's paid. And I will say, look, I mean, it's enjoyable as heck to cover the Chiefs right now. For one season, it would be interesting to cover a guy that's making like 100 and something million, just to see how little salary cap space can you provide around Patrick Mahomes and him still try and win this thing. Maybe it's like all Madden mode, basically.
Yeah, I love that. Listen, I don't, people made some comments. We put them up there about, I don't think money's what motivates him. I disagree. Money motivates almost all of us. And I think money is also the scorecard. I think it gets easier now that he's won 3, right? They've put enough talent around him to win 3 championships where the scorecard is no longer about the money. He makes great money. He makes more money on the side than anybody else does. What it is, I've heard varying wide ranges. Jeff, Sam, you guys might know better than me, but I hear some ridiculous numbers that he makes way more off endorsements than he does his salary. And I've heard some that I think are ridiculous, that it's like a paltry sum, right? Like, I don't know where it is. I think it's good money. But don't you think, Jeff, that the fact that he is now unquestionably the best player in football, unquestionably the number 1 quarterback in football, maybe he's getting to a point, we've had those discussions about ranking the quarterbacks, but he's a strong argument that he's definitively number 2. If he's not, he's being discussed with Peyton Manning and Dan Marino and Joe Montana. Take your pick of whoever else you want to put behind Tom Brady. That makes it a little bit easier because, the money for a lot of guys is what validates them. They don't have, in other sports, like in baseball, it's tough to win championships. The best player doesn't win the most championships, right? Basketball, if you're the best player, you're probably going to get pretty damn close to the hardware and the way the salary structures work. They can put enough talent around you. You should be playing for championships. But in baseball, you need to be the highest paid to be the best guy because you might not ever sniff a title. Like Mike Trout didn't even have a playoff win, and he was the unquestioned best player in baseball, and that's why he needed that salary. Don't you think that's part of why Patrick Mahomes doesn't need this, is he is unquestionably the best?
Yeah, but I agree with what you said earlier, that I do think money matters to him because he's working for a living. I mean, it's a fun job to have, and he's done a great job at it, but he still cares about how much he's bringing. If he didn't care about money, he'd play for $50,000 a year. So there's a threshold that people will not cross, and will end up being unhappy if they do cross it. But yeah, I mean, football is an interesting sport when it comes to this because there is, as Sam said, a lot more of a sense of urgency to try to help push the financial parameters to a place that is closer to where basketball is and baseball is. There's no guaranteed money. It's funny because in basketball, we never talk about who's the highest paid player. I couldn't tell you right now who makes the most money in baskall.
I can't.
Everybody makes money.
I can't. It's Jason Tatum just topped Jaylen Brown, and that's one of the things that's ridiculous is about basketball, and they're goofy.
The same thing. Yeah.
But your point is valid. Most people cannot.
Yeah, and so, but I do think that he understands because of his dad, because of the people, who his dad played with, other professional baseball players, the importance of creating a legacy, and that you can't put a price on that. So I think that is a valid statement in terms of how he looks at money. But the other thing about it too is the guy that he gets compared to now, most of these guys didn't play at a time when you could make a ton of money. So Joe Montana, the Dan Marino, the John Elways, they didn't cash in the way today's quarterbacks are, so they never had to really worry about that. It was always about legacy with those guys.
Yeah.
It was back in, I think, February that your colleague, Jeff, Tom Pelisseros, had reported this concept of the owners at least discussing having a separate quarterback cap. And I was like, what more advantage could there be for the Chiefs if something like that is created?
Yeah.
But the other hand is these other teams, and the reason we're talking about this tonight, don't allow the Chiefs, to be disadvantaged with having to pay their quarterback an outrageous amount of money because they insist on topping guys like Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen in the list. And, the question of what Patrick Mahomes is worth versus what he's paid is intriguing. But the more intriguing question is, why do teams feel like they have to top what these guys are making? Patrick Mahomes could be number one on the list. There's 10 other teams responsible for the fact that he's not number one on this list.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And I used to sit back and watch the Patriots. I remember when Vince Wilfork fell to them. I'm like, what are you people doing? Why are you just making it easy for the New England Patriots? And I think Patrick Mahomes has listened to or certainly studied and understood what Tom Brady did on his contract. I've said this a couple of times. Everybody talked about how Tom Brady takes less. Tom Brady takes less. But at the end of the day, when you look at the actual total dollars that Tom Brady got paid and the actual total dollars that Peyton Manning got paid, they're very close, right? Tom Brady might have taken a little bit less, but what he did was keep restructuring, take a payday that wasn't really there, that didn't make headlines about this now makes him the highest paid guy. He just kept taking more cash. The splash is always when a guy signs. That's what everybody remembers. And nobody looks at the fine print on the salary cap websites or where it says, guarantee money. I beat this drum relentlessly. And I beat it on, I was on Sirius and I talked about the contract not long ago, and it didn't even register. It wasn't even a follow-up when I was like, every year he's 2 years guaranteed. Like right now he's got this year and next. And as soon as this year's over, the beginning of the next league year, it'll guarantee 26. So they ding him for not having the guaranteed money. In reality, he'll be paid the most guaranteed money anybody's ever been paid. It just wasn't guaranteed at signing. But what he was guaranteed at signing was a record at signing. And then it's a record that it keeps adding on to it. Nobody brings that up. And then they move money forward to give him money now. Money now is always worth more than money later. And that's what Tom Brady did. And I think that's the genius in him. He recognizes championships are going to be the measuring stick. And so he makes it easy for his team. And Jeff, your point's 100% valid though. If it didn't matter, he'd take $500 and, or the league minimum, and they'd have the most money to put the most talent around him and he'd win the most championships. It does matter. He wants both. He wants to be highly paid, as we all do. He wants to be paid commensurate to what his abilities are, but he will take a little off the top. He'll take a little bit later. He'll take a little less publicity and fanfare for it if it does mean winning. And that does take a special guy, because I can't stress enough. I think Tua wanted the biggest number. I think Jordan Love wants the biggest number because that validates them, because they don't have the trophies to point to and they're shitting their pants that they never are. So they need the payday because they may never hoist any Lombardi trophies.
Well, and they also know that they may not play as long as someone like Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, that's also the certainty he has. As long as he can stay healthy, he's going to get paid. But if you're Tua and you've had these injuries, or if you're Jordan Love and you sat around for 3 years, or other guys, even Joe Burrow, I would say, who's been banged up, or Lamar Jackson, who's been banged up, you're not guaranteed being around for 15, 20 years as long as Tom Brady was. And maybe that's why Tom Brady felt comfortable taking that money too, knowing that his whole plan was to play well into his 40s.
That's a good point.
That's part of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best when it comes to any and all of your parking lot issues. One contractor, all things parking lot, whether that's striping, whether that's concrete bumpers, signage, maybe it's the drainage. If you got drainage problems, that's right. They even handle the drainage, resurfacing, or building from new. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been making them disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Don't wait. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents and keeps your parking lot as safe as possible. Contact Gann Asphalt and Concrete right now at 816-484-3338. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. When do we think he is going to want to be brought up? After 26 is kind of the common theme. Do you think that's when it is, Sam? Do you have a?
It's after 20. Yeah, it's after 27 actually.
27. Okay.
So I could see it, similarly as the last time being during ahead of the 2027 off season, or maybe even during the 2027 season. But that 27 years, the last like big number on his deal. After that, the deal goes down significantly, which is one of the reasons the APY looks like it does. I mean, there is a bit misleading stuff with that. I mean, he's higher paid than I think the average person thinks he is, and part of it's in because of what you said. I mean, you look at his 2025 deal; it's March 20th of next year that the 2026 deal goes into effect, because 2025 is already guaranteed for him based on, it was March of this year.
Yeah. That's a huge part. When he does it, it has to be the top paid guy, though, right? He'll reset it by a little bit, get a bunch of guaranteed money. Jeff, that is the issue: is can the Chiefs keep up with the guaranteed money that he wants, because they are not a cash-rich team based upon their market.
Yeah, it will be a much different type of negotiation the next time around, because there won't be a Travis Kelce involved. There probably won't be a Chris Jones involved. If there is, he'll be at the tail end of of the current contract. And so, it's hard to really look forward and see who's going to be part of that mix. We're going to talk about, guys like Creed Humphrey at some point today, and Nick Bolton and people like that. But ultimately, yeah, it's going to be, it's twofold. One, there will be fewer people around to compete for the money, but also two, CJ Stroud will have been paid by that point. If Caleb Williams, what we think he is, or Jaden Daniels, or some of the other guys, Michael Penix, they're probably going to start getting paid. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of money, and it'll be a different set of circumstances. It's what makes the NFL good, in that at some point, if you have these kind of players, you have to pay them a premium, and then you have to deal with the ramifications after the fact. And so that's why I always say, when people talk about, well, he's going to win, chase down Brady and all this stuff, this team, the way it is right now today, will be a far cry from what it is 3 years from now. Like, probably 80% of the guys who are here won't be around. And so you don't know what the guys are going to look like. And you don't know what the budget is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about Hollywood Brown. Sam, Patrick Mahomes talking up his all-around game, right? Which I think is kind of interesting, because he talks about the all-around game. People they think in terms of a speed guy, but really he hasn't been the deep threat to this point. What do you take away, and what have you seen that either backs up or disputes what it is Patrick Mahomes said about Hollywood Brown so far at camp?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is running a lot more than just go routes. And I think Xavier Worthy, a lot of the stuff we're seeing him be effective on is deeper down the field, whether it's corner, post, or go routes. But yeah, I mean, Hollywood Brown is used underneath as frequently as anyone outside of Rashee Rice in the wide receiver room. I mean, look, I've been banging this drum for a while. Like, I think Hollywood Brown's going to have a career year in this offense. I think he's a really talented player who hasn't had throwing quarterbacks in his career. We saw, I think, Stren, you and I talked about when Marquez Valdes-Scantling signed. Like, you and I were the skeptical ones about that, because he played with Aaron Rodgers. The fact that Hollywood Brown comes over from two quarterbacks that are not passing quarterbacks, I think he's going to have a big year. And also he's healthy. And it's been a long, long time since Hollywood Brown was healthy.
Yeah. You buying the all-around game of Hollywood Brown, Jeff?
I'm taking the wait-and-see approach. And I've been consistent with that with him and Xavier Worthy, in that, and I understand the excitement about Hollywood Brown. I understand the need to talk about all the things he can do, but I've just heard so many players at that position talked about in that way over the last, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 years, that I'm a little bit skeptical. Like, I want to see it. And I think if he had that type of all-around game, he wouldn't be playing on a 1-year deal. And so somewhere in there is a limitation that has not been surfaced. And I think it goes beyond the quarterback play. I say it a lot about Lamar Jackson. Like, Zay Flowers has a similar skill set to Hollywood Brown. He had a pretty good rookie year with him. And so I don't know. Obviously, they call some different plays, different coordinator, but Hollywood Brown had a lot of one-on-one matchups when Lamar Jackson was playing with him, and was never that dynamic of a player, given what he can do. And so, I'm going to wait and see how it plays out for him.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood Brown was as effective as Zay Flowers was last year. I mean, he did get a 1,000-yard season there. And I would also argue that Zay Flowers, he had Odell Beckham Jr. in the room, and he had in his prime Mark Andrews for the first, 12, 13 games last year. Like, I don't know who else the Ravens really had when Hollywood Brown was with Lamar Jackson. I also just think Lamar Jackson, I mean, we've talked about it. He's made big strides the last 2 years as a thrower. I don't think he's even the same guy that Hollywood Brown had when he was in Baltimore.
Yeah, no,
sorry to interrupt, Soren. I do the skepticism is valid because Jeff's right. Like
100%.
there is a receiver talked about in Kansas City every year, so like the skepticism is totally valid.
Yeah, I do. I'm with you. Because I know we just talked about the dollars with Patrick Mahomes, and you can't say, well, the dollars are what you are as a player, because that would mean Patrick Mahomes is now the 11th best quarterback, right? So the money doesn't tell the whole story, but it does say something when wide receivers are getting, we just had another wide receiver extension. I forget who it was today. That was $80 million guaranteed and $110 million over like 5 years. And I was, who was it?
DJ Moore. Yeah.
DJ Moore. And I'm like, really? Like this high? And he's on that 1 year deal. So there is a statement. I think the reality is he's kind of got typecast into being a slot receiver, right? Like not the deep guy. I mean, I think, when you're 11 yards a catch, and, somebody mentioned the Chiefs need somebody with a big catch radius. He doesn't have that. Yeah. He's not a big goal line threat unless you have a guy that can scheme him open, right? His physical stature is much more Wes Welker than it is Randy Moss, right? So I do think there's an element, and that's the intriguing part for me is I'm more open to the needle being threaded here and there being a scenario where the Chiefs like him and he likes Kansas City and they could get something done beyond this year. Most likely he's one and done, either because he sucks and he's not worth the money they gave him, which was the MVS deal, right? And I think they got burnt by the multi-year deal with MVS. They thought, okay, we'll make this work. So they're going to be even more likely to run away and say, well, we'll keep finding a guy for 1 year, especially if they can land somebody, that is a developmental guy. Xavier Worthy comes along and can fill that role. I think that will be big. Or it also probably depends upon the growth of Rashee Rice. I think that's the next piece of the equation is what are we going to see? We've talked endlessly about what his suspension will be, Jeff. What are we thinking Rashee Rice is going to be? Good returns. I've talked to a couple of people who like what they've seen out of Rashee Rice so far. Are you buying, that he's grown as a receiver and that Mahomes is liking what he's seeing there?
Look, I've also been on record as saying I think his ceiling as a receiver is not that high, given skill set. I mean, he's not a burner and he's not a phenomenal route runner, but he's very physical. He's very good after the catch. So that tends to, as you get older in your career, you start taking a lot of hits and you start to wear down a bit. But it seems like I'm coming around to the idea that he understands how critical it is for him to play well this year. Like he can't have happen what happened in the offseason and then come out and lay an egg during the season. And so, I'm starting to believe some of the hype about his work ethic, the way he's worked in Texas with Hollywood Brown and Mahomes, and the way he's approached training camp and the way he's approached being at practice during the OTA periods and the mini camps. And so I still believe he's going to be suspended this year, but I imagine when he comes back, his hair will be on fire to try to make up for what he's missed and the damage he's done to his career and this team.
I would push back a little bit on he is physical. I agree. He's not a burner. I agree with that. But the route runner part, isn't that the part you can make better? I mean, Tyreek Hill wasn't a great route runner in year one. He went to the Pro Bowl. He took the shots from Jalen Ramsey about being a returner and not a receiver. But he came back saying, listen, he was quizzing every wide receiver that was there. What makes you great? What do you do? And they talked about the route running, and he made himself a better route runner. Isn't that the part you want to leave up to the receiver, right? Like the physical tools, he can't really do much about. He is what he is speed wise, but he is what he is strength wise, which is pretty good. And the route running, he can make better.
Yeah. I mean, Rashee Rice's route running issues are in breaking routes. And since he plays so frequently in the slot, like you've got to be really good at the slant patterns. And that's the aspect he's got to improve from year one to year two, because he's good at the outbreaking route stuff. Like that's where he excelled last year in his first year. But the tendency with his size and his after the catch ability, I mean, if you include the postseason, which I realize the unfairness of this, nobody in football had more yards after catch last year than Rashee Rice did. I think in the regular season, he was third in the league. So Jeff's right. He's terrific after the catch. So what do you want to do with the guy that's terrific after the catch? Get him the ball as quickly as possible after the snap. And he's got to be really good at slants. because we know he can make guys miss and he can plow through guys and at least get 4 or 5 extra yards as he's being brought down if he can catch the ball quickly on slants. But yeah, I mean, so there's some route running there, but there is some route running that needs to be improved too.
Go ahead, Jeff. I know you were going to.
I was going to say, but I think the thing about Tyreek Hill that he always had working in his favor is that it's easier to be a great route runner when you can run past people, or you can make people think you're going to run past them because they have to respect that. I think the problem Rashee Rice is always going to have is people are going to sit on his routes, and that's when you really have to be a craftsman. To me, he's a lot like Deebo Samuel in the way he plays. There's a lot of, and Deebo Samuel gets away with it because he's so physical. He can get the ball and just bull through people and push people around. And that's, whereas Brandon Ayuk for the 49ers is really a craftsman as a route runner. And you see that in his game. I think it's a lot harder to become that if you don't have the top end speed, if you don't have the nimbleness to you, if your game is more about being like, a super physical guy.
I think the question is, are we seeing him appreciate what he's got more, right? If he is putting in, Mahomes is saying he's doing great. If that's the case, then has the accident and all the off-field turmoil centered him on, wow, I could throw this all away and I got to be the best that I got to be, or is it as simple as, wow, I'm losing my ass on this deal. I've got to pay out a lot of money. Yeah. And I thought I made a lot of money, but I don't, because I'm paying it all out, and I damn well better be good because I need the fat contract. Maybe you're a Chiefs fan, you hope it's all of the above, right? But I mean, I look, Devontae Adams wasn't a burner, to me that's the hope. And I don't remember what Devontae Adams' 40 time was, but that's the hope, I think. Or we've said it, your guy Jeff, Chris Carter. He wasn't a burner, as be that ultimate chain mover and, shake a guy loose and then catch everything thrown your way. I mean, I think Chris Carter might be the high end for Rashee Rice, but it takes a lot of work to be Chris Carter, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I agree with you. I think it's a different situation when you're running around in Dallas and you're with your homeboys and you're in areas you're used to going to and clubs you used to go into. It's different when you got to look at Mahomes every day. Different when you got to look at Kelsey and Nick Bolton, all these other guys in the locker room who are trying to, do historic things. And so, yeah, I feel as if I was talking to somebody today who said everybody knew about what was going on with this guy before he got drafted. It's crazy how much this stuff starts to come out after the trouble, right? Yeah. Nobody was talking about this stuff before he started getting in trouble. But, yeah, now the rap is out there now. And Andy said it back when it happened. You find out if he learned a lesson from all this stuff. And the only way you can prove that is by playing well on the field and staying out of trouble.
I think part of the problem, I think you make a great point about people not being willing to come forward. I heard some rumblings. We said, hey, there's some rumblings about character, and that was it. We went on. But the part of the problem is it's always people that don't want to put their name next to it.
Yep.
Hey, this coach said, we found this out. It's never a report you really get to make. It's like, ooh, bad dude. Oh, what was it? Oh, man, he had a situation with a gal, or he, watch out for him driving. Just take the car keys away. Like, you'll hear that kind of stuff, but you can't be like, oh, can I quote you on that? No. It's like, no. So it is. I hear what you're saying. I do agree. Everybody after the fact that heard a million things, right? Okay. But it is a little bit harder to put that kind of stuff out there, I think, on a regular basis. I wanted to highlight this. Jameson said, Rice doesn't have a high ceiling. He's a lot like Deebo Samuels. Like, he's not.
I didn't say he is Deebo Samuel.
No.
But he's got some qualities like
he's got a lot of qualities. I agree. I think that is a very good comp that you make, because that's run after catch ability there, right? And but he's not quite as big as Deebo Samuel either.
No.
Deebo Samuel's looks like a tailback. Looks like Eric Dickerson if you put 29 on him. Yeah. He's not quite that tall, but he's got a running back build to him, and I think that's significant, to say the least.
Yeah. And when I say ceiling, I mean like 1,500 yard all pro. Like, that's how people were talking about him after the first year. And it's just like, I could see him hovering around where he was this past year as a 900,000 yard receiver in a good year.
Yeah. And by the way, that's what Deebo Samuel's been. Like, most years, that's what he is. So like, there's the ceiling is the 1,500 yard year, right? That's the ceiling, and ceiling is rarely reached. Right. That's as high as you can go. So I think it's important to understand what the term ceiling means. if we're going to discuss it. It's important to know we're brought to you by our friends at Besame Wellness, and you can save on your entire order 25%. That's right. Save 25% at Besame Wellness when you use the promo code podcast25. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know. Save 25% with the promo code podcast25 at Besame Wellness.
Besame Wellness, online or curbside. Shop daily at Besame Wellness for all your cannabis needs. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 9, Sundays, 10 to 6. Locations in North Kansas City, Liberty, Smithville on Berry Road, and in Warrensburg. Even delivery for medical marijuana. Getting your cannabis has never been easier. We at Besame Wellness strive to make your life as easy as possible and cannabis as accessible as possible.
All right, speaking of Rashee Rice, Jeff, let's talk about the homegrown wide receiver. The Chiefs have struggled with Sky Moore. Other guys like Cornell Powell, they're when you look at their wide receiver drafts, it's not been home run after home run. Rashee Rice has been by far the best under this regime. Is there a common theme here? Is it just that, wide receivers are a tough lot to nail down? Or are the Chiefs doing something wrong at that spot? They have the quarterback. They have the genius play caller. Why hadn't it been better when they draft wide receivers?
Well, part of it to me is that they have a high expectation of themselves, a high opinion of their ability to develop guys, and they like a certain type of receiver. And so I think we all see the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases, or whoever else you want to talk about who's coming and blowing it up, the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. For whatever reason, those kind of guys either aren't available to them or they're not interested in them. And so, yeah, I do feel as if it is an interesting dynamic in what's been a dynastic run, right? Like, it hasn't hurt them, but you would think that with a quarterback as exceptional as Mahomes and a coach as great as Andy Reid, that you'd be able to get more out of guys who come down your pipeline. And I do wonder, like, as they get deeper into the next few years, how much does that affect their ability to keep winning championships? Because, they fall in love with guys with certain characteristics. They want to create certain elements within this offense. But I think sometimes they just think too much of guys. And it's because I've seen this happen throughout the league. Every coach feels like, if I had this guy, you give me this guy, I'm going to make him great. There's a lot of that in how the Chiefs evaluate that position.
Sam, you got a reason why they haven't had success?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things at play. I mean, first of all, Andy Reid's offense is not easy to learn. So it takes guys beyond just 1 year to fully get acclimated. We saw Rashee Rice was terrific in the second half of the year, was pretty average in the first half of the year. The second thing is you play with a quarterback that does not like to throw tight window throws. And one of the things, I mean, you mentioned route running can be improved. Like, it can take guys a year to learn how to get open, to learn the nuances of, creating space for themselves, to learn the nuances of playing against zone defense. But then number three is you've got a really good football team. And when you are a really good team, every game matters. And when every game matters, you're less patient to play through guys' struggles than maybe an average or a below average team that gets a wide receiver might be willing to let a guy play through some struggles and learn on the job. The Chiefs have not shown that they are willing to let guys learn on the job. And so I don't think it's just – it'd be great if we could just point at one thing, but like all three of those things point to a tough environment for a rookie wide receiver to come in and contribute right away. The flip side of it is you do have a really good offense. And so I think those deeper wide receivers that feel like they can make an impact can make it immediately. I just think expecting like the whole gamut out of, a wide receiver for what he's going to be and reach his ceiling early on, it's tough here.
Yeah, I do too. And I think maybe they get a little more criticism they deserve. Here are the wide receivers that have been drafted by Brett Veach as the general manager. Tremont Smith, who they quickly converted to cornerback, was a 6th-round pick in 2018.
The opposite. He was drafted as a cornerback and then converted.
To wideout? Okay. He was mostly just a kick returner,
to
be honest, whichever way it was. But I'm sure you are right, Sam. So I stand corrected. McCole Hardman in the 2nd round in 2019. I mean, caught a winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. I mean, the career's been acceptable for a 2nd round, right? That's where I would go with it. It hasn't been a huge hit. It wasn't a dismal failure either way. And then they didn't take another one until Cornell Powell in the 5th, right? Then they take one Sky Moore in the 2nd in 22, then Rashee Rice in the 2nd, and now Xavier Worthy. If Xavier Worthy hits, or if, God forbid, Xavier Worthy hit and Sky Moore takes a step, all of a sudden that doesn't look so bad, right? Like, it's still a little bit of the jury being out when you consider GMs. You got to wait a few years before you can really start getting some grades. It's not awful, right? Can we all agree on that?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think the point we're making here is that given what these receivers are working with, you would think that there'd be a lot more consistent success from them. I mean, some of these guys have had their moments. And look, I even think Travis Kelce's a part of this too, because he's allowed so much freedom within the offense to improvise and do what he wants to do. And Mahomes relies on him. We talked about how when Josh Allen lost Stephon Diggs and how much he relied on Stephon Diggs. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks do lock in on certain guys that they know they can trust, that they want to make big plays with. And Travis is that guy for Patrick. And so I'm sure there is a little bit of a fall off or a correlation to some of these guys who are running routes and thinking, hey, I'm open too. The Super Bowl, perfect example of it, where Rashee Rice is open over the middle and there's pressure, obviously, but Mahomes is looking to Kelsey in that moment late in the game to make a big play for him, as opposed to looking at, hey, maybe Rashee Rice can make that play for me. But I do believe that, look, the Seattle Seahawks spent 2 second-round picks on Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. They've done all right for themselves. The T. Higgins, the second-round pick. I mentioned Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, the 3rd and the 5th-round pick. There are guys to be found in these later rounds, but again, if they're not running a certain time or they're not feeling a certain image that they want to have, I think they just don't believe that those guys fit. And it'd be nice to see them take some of those kind of players every now and then.
I think it's interesting, Sam, what you said about the difficulty of the offense, because I remember talking with Al Saunders when he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and he was going through the difference between the West Coast, and there's much less difference between West Coast and the Don Coryell, the Air Coryell offense, because they all steal from each other and they all kind of blend together. But back then there was a little bit more separation. And he was like, listen, what Don Coryell came up with his offense was incredibly complicated for quarterbacks, but incredibly simple for receivers, because he was at San Diego State. And when a kid got kicked out of USC, he wanted him on the field next week at San Diego State. So if you could figure out a simple route tree, the odds go out, the evens go in, and the bigger the number, the further you got to go down the field. So even if you're off by a little bit, if you can just figure that out, you can get in the ballpark where the quarterback wants to go with the ball. And that was where it came from. And the West Coast offense, Andy Reid's roots, is all verbiage and a different term for every play. And it does require a lot more study. I mean, I think there needs to be a little bit. I know Andy loves his offense, has been very successful, but is there a way to make it easier for a guy that maybe, in the 28 on the Wonderlic or, has struggled to pick up offenses, to be able to get talent out on the field and in spots to succeed? I think that's a valid point, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, they did it with Rashee Rice last year, where they made him learn just one specific position and said, hey, we'll grow your role as the season expands. But I think one of the other things you can point to as far as the Chiefs wide receivers is not just look at their draft, but look at how guys that used to be here, how they're performing elsewhere. I mean, Tyreek Hill has better numbers in Miami than he did in Kansas City. And I know that's hard for some Chiefs fans to hear or accept, but it is a fact. And then you look at some guys that they brought in from the outside. I know a lot of people point to Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, he still had a better year in Pittsburgh than he had in Kansas City. And they bring in veteran guys and try them out. And we mentioned Marquez Valdes-Scantling earlier. He had worse numbers here than he had in Green Bay. I don't think I think it's just too simple to say it's a drafting problem.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's stay with you, Sam, on Kingsley Suamataia. You've been up to all but a couple of the practices. What do you think of him? They put on the pads, a lot of excitement. He ran with the ones. That got people excited that he was going to be the guy. What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's only the padded practices I think we can judge anything. And, some of these one-on-one drills, and you'll see some – like Mitchell Schwartz is always pretty vocal that the one-on-one drills, the defensive lineman should win. There's no help from the other 4 guys, right? So you're playing in space. So
and you can go a little wider where you'd probably be running into your defensive lineman, or there's no scheme, no twisting. Yes, it does lean towards the defensive line for sure.
Yeah. So within that context, he certainly has been beat. throughout the padded practices of training camp. Like Felix Anudike-Uzomah has gotten him on inside moves. And like, look, the inside move was the knock on him in college was guys could beat him back inside. That's the part that I don't know exactly how it's going to show up in a game because of what I just mentioned. You know, you've got a guard there. You potentially have traffic there. What's interesting is we saw so frequently that the last left tackle or two left tackles ago with Orlando Brown consistently got beat outside. Kingsley definitely has more athleticism to where you can see the potential. You can see what the Chiefs saw, but you can also see that there's going to be a learning curve with them. And I mentioned this on the podcast here a couple of weeks ago that Super Bowl teams overwhelmingly do not go with rookie left tackles. There's only been 2 in NFL history, and those 2 guys didn't even open the season as the starting left tackle. Like, teams that win Super Bowls don't take this risk because it is a risk. It is a position that requires some growth. And that's my way of saying that 4 days into padded practices is not what he's going to look like in year 1, because what he's going to look like in year 1 is not what he's going to look like in year 2, 3, and 4 either.
Jeff, I think to Sam's point there about no rookie left tackles not winning the Super Bowl, also expensive quarterbacks don't win the Super Bowl, right? But they have the last 2 years. Patrick Mahomes has done that. And I say that because, it's never happened till it's happened. Then it's happened and it gets easier to happen again, right? It's not a thing anymore. And the question is, does Patrick Mahomes, the elixir to winning with a rookie left tackle if there's going to be issues?
I feel as if, no. I think that if their defense plays the way they played last year, yeah, they'll probably win it again. But the bigger question in my mind about a rookie left tackle is how is their confidence affected by being in that position where not only do you have Mahomes you're protecting, but you also have a Super Bowl team, a defending champion that's trying to win a 3rd straight championship. That's a lot to put on somebody. And I don't know too many young guys who can walk into that situation and struggle and be okay with it. Like, there's very few positions in the NFL where you're exposed and people talk about you. Look at Juwan Taylor last year, how he was supposedly affected by that first game against the Lions and all the stuff that came with, the scrutiny about the quick jumping and the penalties. That played a role. And that guy's been in the league for over 4 years. And so if Kingsley Suamataia has those kinds of problems, I do worry about how he's going to handle it, because it's a huge job to have, and they're asking a lot of a guy. And just because he's athletic and has potential, that doesn't mean he's not going to be prone to taking this stuff, in a difficult way.
Yeah, one sentence on that is that I've never thought that preseason mattered more for a rookie since Patrick Mahomes got here than Kingsley's preseason games, because I do think there is some confidence and a mental game that's going to be part of how he opens the season.
Yeah, for sure. Let's hear Creed Humphrey talking about Kingsley Suamataia, what he thinks about how the rookie's progressing so far.
There's a lot of stuff thrown at you during training camp, especially as a rookie, and he's done a good job being able to process stuff, study on his own at night, things like that. He's done a good job, and he's picking up on stuff well. So for him, it's just continuing to get these reps, going against really good defensive ends right now. It's going to be really helpful for him. So it's been good, and he's getting better every day, and you can tell he's bought in and working hard to get better every day too.
Some of that applies to the other 2 offensive linemen, Dorsett, Hansen. What are your impressions of them? So
they've done great. They're awesome to be around. Same way with them. They're buying in how we need them to, and they've improved every day, and they show some great stuff, and it's been awesome to see so far.
Take anything away from, I thought it was important to leave the other 2 guys in this. So you hear how he talks about all the rookies. I mean, the initial question was about Suamataia, but a lot of details. Is it just because he knows he's going to be out there and so he's got a lot more about him, or is it because he's much more excited about what he's seeing from him than he is the other 2 rookies, Jeff?
I'm sure there is some confidence building going on there. I'm sure these guys hear what's said. They know what's said. I'm sure Kingsley Suamataia is, he obviously that was in a press conference setting, but he will be at a locker probably near Creed Humphrey during the season. These guys want him to know that they got his back. I mean, again, I'm confident. I'm optimistic for him because I'm glad they are actually taking this gamble and taking this risk and making this investment in a young guy and trying to develop him. But as Sam said, it's the patience. Will they be okay with him having some tough moments and Mahomes taking some hits? I think everybody. I think it takes a whole village to raise a kid. And I think that's how they're going to approach it with this guy.
With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project that they do coming with a written warranty, GAN Asphalt and Concrete is your one choice. When it comes to solving any and all parking lot problems, they keep your parking lot safer, help you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Hot days right now, but in a month or two, you start chasing those temperatures at night. If it is something you need done, seal coating, any kind of parking lot procedure, GAN Asphalt and Concrete, call 816-484-3338. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. Let's talk about the puppet, the Kermit the puppet, Patrick the Mahomes, or Kermit the Mahomes. I can't remember what we came up with. Was it Kermit the Patrick the frog, or Kermit the Mahomes? Is that going to carry any weight into the offseason or into the regular season, Sam?
So I don't think so, but I want to put that under the context that I'm usually the guy that is saying this stuff matters, because I do think, I think the application of it is misinterpreted as like being really fired up for the game or something. I think it makes guys concentrate harder during the week. You don't have to convince guys to pay attention in a meeting, that sort of thing, and like that stuff has an effect. But the Raiders already gave the Chiefs the best gift they could have possibly given the Chiefs, short term and long term. I mean, Andy Reid texted Antonio Pierce after the Super Bowl and thanked him for the wake-up call that they gave him on Christmas Day. I don't know that the Chiefs win the Super Bowl without going through that experience. They were forced to simplify their offense. Their pre-snap stuff got so much better that I talked a lot about. But also it had this long-term effect too, which is the Raiders were one of the early teams to say, even though that was late in the season, to say, we're not going to take away the deep ball from you guys. We just don't think you guys can execute this. That's why you guys can't complete these. And they were right. And so then, and I'm not saying the Chiefs wouldn't have reached this aspect of the conclusion anyway, but it was just the clearest evidence that their deep pass issues were not just how defenses were playing them. It was their own personnel. And that game illuminated that more than any other. And look what the Chiefs did this offseason. Again, I'm not saying they don't have this offseason without that Raiders thing, but you've got an offense that's really fired up to be different, an offense that's really fired up to play against that Raiders team again. I just think there's only so much ammo you can add to this situation. I don't think, and like they're capped out on it. I just don't think they need anything else added to that game.
Jeff, do you think it's going to be a thing?
I don't. This isn't high school or even college. It's the Chiefs have won enough, and Patrick Mahomes has won enough to where their motivation is far beyond people. In fact, it's low hanging fruit, right? To make fun of his voice. It's been the same voice he's had since he got to the NFL. So there's been plenty of opportunities for people to, crack wise about it. But and I feel
so you're more offended by the joke being bad than you are the concept of the joke.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't even creative, and so it's the concept that gets talked about in training camps. But I agree with him. I think the fact that the Raiders felt as if they tapped into something that they could do against the Chiefs, and that there's always going to be this element of when you play against teams that are as pass happy as the Chiefs have been, that we'll just beat you up. You're at your core, you're soft, you're weak, and we will tap into that at some point. And that's what the Raiders won that game by playing that way, by being very physical, very aggressive, getting after the quarterback and running the football. And so the Chiefs have a lot of other things to deal with before they play the Raiders. But I imagine that's what they will remember most, is that we got to be more physical with these guys. These guys can't come in here and think they can push us around again.
Yeah, I think it'll mean something more to the other 52 guys than it does Pat. This is where they get his back. And so, listen, you got to go out and win the game. And when we've seen Petty Pat, the 1, 2, 3, 4, when he played Lamar Jackson, counting that he was number 4 on the NFL's list and not number 1, and the counting to 10. And when we've seen those moments, he gets them down first, right? And he comes out ready to play all the time. So, but I think if you kick out, if you're a guard coming around the corner and you see that corner on the field, you might be looking to lay a shot. But For Patrick Mahomes, like it makes it, if he's going to do more against the Raiders this time because of that, then he plays it like an 8. And he's got another gear to go to when you piss him off. I don't buy that. You get everything Patrick Mahomes has every week, so I don't think it'll be that big a deal overall. I think it'll be talked about. I think it's bigger for the fans. And maybe if the Raiders can ever, quit throwing up on their shoes, other than one miracle game on Christmas Day against the Chiefs, then maybe the rivalry will be back. But
it'll be a thing if he does have a great game. But I think that will cause people to link the two things, where I don't necessarily think there'll be a cause and effect, because again, I just think that cause and effect already exists.
L'Jarius Sneed has left the Kansas City Chiefs and gone to the Tennessee Titans. Everyone loves the cornerback depth, talks about how they can identify, draft, develop corners. And they've certainly had great success, but who is going to step up and be that guy? I asked Steve Spagnuolo this on Monday about having a guy, come in and have that role, or is it just you're going to kind of mix and match? Some interesting comments, I think, here from Steve Spagnuolo. See if you can tell whether or not he feels like guys are stepping up for the job.
Well, we know who our number one is, right? We all know that. And we're just trying to find guys, and we're going to have to find our next 2 best players, however that works out. I mean, we know NJ, Nazi's dealing with his little injury right now. Josh has been out there. Kelvin, there's a lot of guys mixing in there. But somebody's got to surface, and if not, it gets tough. You can have the best pass rush in the world, but these receivers get open quick if you're not able to cover them. So we got some developing to do. We certainly miss LJ, but somebody's got to step up there and take that. But I'm waiting for somebody to, assert themselves and say that, I'm that guy that can do it.
I'm waiting for somebody to assert themselves and say, I'm the guy that can do it. Is that we're not far enough into camp for that statement to be made, or is that no one's grabbing it? Sam, you've been a practice. What'd you see?
Yeah, I mean, I added this to our rundown because that quote just stood out to me so much. First of all, I think it's a message to his specific players. I mean, it's no secret that the players listen to what the coaches say in the press conference. Like, he's hoping he's coaching through the press conference in that situation, but he's not saying it's early. He's saying that this job is open, and I'd hoped in camp somebody would come in and take it. If not, 2 guys would give me a really hard decision. Instead, he's had to rotate guys. I mean, he'd had Kelvin Joseph in there at one point during OTAs. During camp, he opened with Joshua Williams. Now, keep in mind, Jalen Watson's out. But after going with Joshua Williams, he brings in Najee Johnson with his number ones. Well, Najee Johnson gets hurt his first day rolling with the ones. He's back the next day. Then he gets a different injury. Now he's dealing with a minor hamstring injury. And I think Steve Spagnuolo is just going, which guy is going to really, grab this job? Because you guys all knew this was going to be the story of training camp, was L'Jarius Sneed's no longer here. Where are you?
Yeah. Jeff, what do you take?
No, it's exactly what Sam's saying, and your guy, your clubhouse leader, Najee Johnson is hurt again. Which I think that was the guy you were high on to win this job. And the thing that stood out to me in that quote was, we got to find a couple guys that we like, not just one, but there's nobody who's even close to being in the top 2 there. So that, it's early. We all have seen a few of these guys on the field, Watson and Williams, but I said it before, when you're moving Trent McDuffie to the outside and you are figuring out the slot, you're figuring out the other side, they're going to face too many good teams with too many good receivers to have this be an issue. You cannot blitz the way he wants to blitz. And that's what I believe he's saying is, I can't run a lot of my stuff with the way things are right now. And so we better get it figured out, or this defense is not going to be anywhere close to being what it was last season.
All right, let's close with this. Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Dick Bolton all entering the final year of their contracts. So normally, if you're going to extend somebody, this would be the time to do it. It would be before this season gets started. Monday, I asked Creed Humphrey as to whether or not there were any talks going on about extending his deal.
Yeah, right now, for me, I'm focused on training camp. I'm focused on football right now. Focused on getting this team to where it needs to be, and focused on getting the line where it needs to be, and getting myself where I need to be. So that's my focus right now.
There's some chatter out on Twitter that he's going to be paid and paid handsomely. I do believe that conversations are going on with him. Out of those guys, what should be the pecking order, Sam? Like, what's the priority? Because if you're not going to cut Joe Thuney, right, then it gets real hard to keep all these guys. How should they prioritize these guys?
Well, the pecking order should be Trent McDuffie. Like, what am I going to have to reserve?
He's got 2 years.
Right. But, like, what am I going to have to reserve for Trent McDuffie next year and then work backwards from there? Because, look, all three of these guys are valuable pieces. They also play non-premium positions that I don't think you can invest real heavy dollars in, which has absolutely nothing to do with the talent of any of these three players. It's purely the position they play and the effect that position can have on any team. I think Creed Humphrey is as good, at least at the blocking aspect, as a center as anybody in the league, especially with Jason Kelce out of the league. With Trey Smith, I don't envision a scenario in which Trey Smith is back. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but other teams like to play guards. The Chiefs really, other than Joe Thuney, which we all know was an effect of not getting Williams, was they haven't paid their own guards. They've let a lot of their interior linemen walk.
It was just to be clear, I don't want to breeze past that. They didn't get Trent Williams, and they also had told Patrick Mahomes as he walked off the field in Tampa, we will fix this. And so they were going to spend somewhere and do something to improve this offensive line.
Yes. And then, the other aspect of this with those two guys is you drafted 2 interior linemen. I think you'd like to see camp to see if those guys could play. To the point of Joe Thuney, you didn't get the left tackle, so you get the guard. Do you have the left tackle? Do you feel like you have the left tackle solved, or do you feel like you need to be really strong at guard? Because the Chiefs have done this 2 ways. When Patrick Mahomes started, they were really good at tackle, not good on the interior. Then they flipped it because they realized tackles cost a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money, so we're going to have to just be really good at the positions that don't cost quite as much. So there's a lot of unknowns for the plan Bs right now to see if the plan B could become plan A. And then with Nick Bolton, I just think, look, there's a reason they signed Drew Tranquill to a 2-year deal, was because they thought that losing Nick Bolton would be a possibility. It doesn't mean they're not interested in him, but I do think it caps the price that they'd be willing to pay him.
Jeff, how do you see the pecking order?
I think it's Creed, Bolton, Smith, and I think one of them gets paid. It's probably going to be Creed. I agree with what someone just said in the comment section that it would go against the grain for what they have done in the past with letting Rodney Hudson walk and letting Mitch Morse walk. But he's the youngest of that group, or he's the most polished, accomplished, and youngest of that group. Joe Thuney is 32 years old now. So he's going to be gone at some point in the next year or two. And it's time to start building the next offensive line. And so you've got Jawan Taylor, who will be here for a minute. You've got Suamataia, who will be here for a minute. I think Humphrey stays. And I do think Bolton, as much as I like Bolton, as much as I think Bolton would probably take less to stay here, he's an off-ball linebacker, and you can find those guys. So, yeah, I think Smith and Bolton are probably gone.
I think Creed gets done. I think there's a possibility they sign both offensive linemen, because I think, but the $20 million per that the Broncos guy just signed a week or 2 ago, like, I think is really pricey. I mean, that really takes the number up there, and so I don't think you can sign both. I think
Carolina paid their guards, those 2 guards.
I know. So I think Creed gets done, but that's a little scary. Like, he's got to get the snaps figured out. But I think Creed gets done. I think Harrison Butker gets done too, by the way. I think they extend him out before the season gets started, or try to. But I think
what's the largest contract in the league right now for a center? 13.5, is that right?
Yeah, I think he'll be the highest paid center in football.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they sign him, he's absolutely the highest paid center, and they are certainly having conversations with his party. Like, the question is, how much does he have to clear it? I mean, he's like, Creed Humphrey's not signing for less than, if it's 13.5, he's not signing for less than 13.5.
I think, and we'll talk about this on our next podcast when we're going to talk about position groups and rankings that are out there for position groups and individual players. I do think Bolton carries more value for the Chiefs than most people would think, and I think they value him more than the position would, and I think they value that position maybe more than they should when you see how much money they gave Anthony Hitchens back in the day. So I think there's a potential. I don't know if it's Trey over Bolton, but I do think they also know that I don't think they ever want to have to go tell Patrick Mahomes, we will fix the offensive line, right? I think that is now a standing order. The O-line must be fixed, right? And so I think offense will take the priority for sure. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor solving parking lot problems since 1994. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Besame Wellness. Don't forget, you can save 25% on your order when you use the promo code podcast25. Make sure you tell them you heard about it here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. That's podcast25. Use that promo code, save 25% on your order at Besame Wellness. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.